Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the Student Sideline, where we talk about what's really going on in sports beyond the game. Our episode today is titled NIL Pressure When Media Becomes the Game. I'm Gabby Kiley, your host, and today we're getting into something that's honestly changing college sports in a huge way: NIL and how media hype is putting pressure on athletes and making it harder for teams to control their image. Athletes today aren't just athletes anymore. They're brands, influencers, and public figures all at once. And with that comes a lot more attention, expectations, and pressure. I'm here with my co host, Kaden. What's up? Say hello to everyone.
What's up, guys? I'm Caden. I'm also a student at the University of Miami, and I'm excited to jump in today and jump really into this world of NIL and how it truly is changing the game.
Yes, okay, we're excited to be here. And we also have our special guest, Katie, who will join us in a bit. So let's get into it. So let's start off with talking about what exactly is NIL and why it has changed college sports so much.
Yeah, so from a foundational aspect, NIL is really allowing players to make money from their name, image, and likeness, which is what NIL stands for. And it's allowing players to go out and get sponsorships, make money on social media, endorsements, and really take it to a whole new level where they're actually able to make money on their name, image, and likeness, which really ties in with their gameplay and how the team is doing.
Mm, okay. And do you think that athletes are actually prepared to handle that level of responsibility this early in their lives and careers? I mean, a lot of them are just kids still.
Yeah, I think that's a big point because a lot of these, I mean, they're still kids. They come into college 17, 18, and they're really just kind of thrown into the deep end for NIL. And with it being such a newer concept in the world of NCAA, there's not a ton of guidelines and kind of a path for them to follow. So I think they kind of just had to go for it and jump in and try to figure it out themselves,
Mm,
which can definitely pose some risk. And especially in the money aspect, it's hard for these younger people to manage that kind of money coming in so fast.
mhm.
So I think definitely there needs to be some support from people at the university, and also building better guidelines through the NCAA is definitely something that should happen to make sure that these kids can handle this big responsibility and these big finances coming their way.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. And so do you think that the media hype around it is helping them or hurting them more?
Yeah, I think the media hype is a good point for NIL because it really allows them to kind of branch out and make their own brand, and get that recognition for themselves as opposed to just the team more in the past than their superstars. But I think it can do a little bit of both for sure. But I think for a lot of people, it helps getting their name out more and kind of making a brand for themselves, not just a stat line, because they can really get their name out there and people will know them not just for how many touchdowns they score, how many points they average, but really for who they are and what can they can offer for a team and also in a personal brand area. But it also can definitely hurt them. It brings a lot of pressure as it's not just a player anymore, it's really a person and a brand that you're looking at. So that brings a lot of pressure, I think. And if
Mhm.
people aren't prepared for that, it can definitely hurt their performance. And also, if they're not doing it the right way on social media and stuff like that, it can definitely get them into some trouble.
I feel like when NIL first came out, everyone was like, "Oh, it's just about athletes getting paid," but now it's way bigger than that. It's actually changing how media works in sports. Like media companies need sports for content, and sports organizations need media exposure and revenue, especially through things like rights fees. But NIL is kind of disrupting that relationships because now athletes don't fully rely on traditional media anymore. Instead of ESPN breaking news, athletes are literally posting it themselves. Transfers, commitments, brand deals, it's all happening on Instagram first. And media platforms are starting to act like media companies in in a sense. And now athletes are doing the same thing. They're creating content, building audiences, and controlling their own narratives. And NIL actually connects to limit media access because schools don't need media as much anymore. They can just use their athletes' platforms to promote the team. So instead of giving reporters access, teams can just post behind the scenes content themselves and get even more engagement. But I think one of the biggest shifts is how NIL is changing what it means to be an athlete. Like now, it's not just about performance, it's about branding. If you're good at social media, you're more valuable. which is honestly, it creates a whole new layer of pressure. Like, you have to be an athlete and a content creator.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with it. That I agree that both it helps and it hurts. I think that at some times, like the hype can come way too early and people they already expect like elite performance from athletes that they haven't really
Yeah.
gotten a chance to develop in the first place either, you know? So I feel like
Yeah,
I
for
agree that
sure.
it's like good and bad. But I mean, with that, do you think that the pressure affects how they perform on the field, like with all those eyes on them now?
Yeah, I think it definitely can. I mean, some people will thrive under that pressure, right? But there's also people who've come from maybe a smaller school in high school and they've kind of jumped into this huge environment at a big football school or whatever sport it may be. And that's already enough pressure in itself. And adding on top all this NIL pressure to get sponsorships and bigger packages, and also that social media aspect that's really burst onto the scene with NIL, it can definitely bring some pressure that could hurt performances for players, I think. So that's something that I mean, it's just gonna take time to get used to that in the whole college sports environment, but it definitely can hurt performances on the field if the players aren't ready for that.
Mhm, and do you think that this is something that, for example, with Shador Sanders, do you think that this is something of the NIL working in his favor, or do you think that it was creating too much hype and pressure?
Yeah, I think that's a good case to look at because he is obviously such a big character, not just a good player, but also really like an influencer, honestly. And I think that for him, it really was a great showcase of how it can do both because it really did make him a huge name in college sports, even on Colorado, not a huge football school, and in the Big 12, not a major season for them. They didn't make it to the playoff or anything like that, but still everyone knew who he was and everyone was following him. So I think that definitely helped him for draft stock and also just his personal brand because he really got a ton of attention there and it allowed him to do a lot of good things. But also, I mean, it's a lot of pressure on him, especially being the son of Deion Sanders and being a character himself. It did kind of bring some criticism his way, and we could see that in the draft. I mean, he was projected first round pick, and it was really crazy to see him fall to the fifth round. And most people are convinced, and so am I. I think it's quite obvious that a lot of that fall was due to who he was, not just like how he was as a player, but more on the personality side and this kind of social media NIL side of things. And
Yeah.
that really kind of showcased how it can hurt people because they're trying to show off who they are as a person to really get these bigger deals past just being good at the sport. So I think it can hurt because I mean nobody's perfect and everyone's gonna have criticisms of people. So I think that really showcased for Shador and other players how it can hurt them in draft stock and everything like that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, especially the part about with the NFL draft. I feel like another reason maybe behind the scenes that why he fell so far down than expected was also because you have to think about it. In the NIL, he was basically making more money than they were offering him for his NFL deal. Like, and
Yeah,
at that point, we don't know what conversations are being had behind the scenes of that, you know, he's probably asking for more money, teams probably aren't wanting to comply. Like he's expecting a lot more than some of these other NFL like drafty players because
yeah,
he's already coming with so much behind him and a brand and a persona and like he's bringing so much more to the table than just his talent, you know? He's
yeah,
bringing fans and views and following. So I feel like behind the scenes too, he could have been asking for a lot more. And also like how you mentioned his dad and stuff, I feel like a lot of the decisions could have also been driven by his dad. And on that note, I something I want to note is that do you think that it's fair that in the NFL, like you have to be a licensed sports agent to represent a player, but in most states, like for high school or college, you don't have to be because and like I think that's kind of crazy because if you think about it, at the time, Shador Sanders like he was making more money and getting more hype than some NFL players are, like the lower like tier everything. So it doesn't really make much sense that his brand wouldn't be held to the same standard or like any other potential NFL athletes. You know what I mean?
yeah. That's a good point with the agents and all. It is kind of like a steep slope, especially with Shador and his dad and all that drama. Because transferring that to the NFL, where it's truly a professional league in a business as opposed to a school, you can get into some drama with that. And I think also your point about him being more of a star than a lot of NFL players really showcases the power of NIL because I mean, there's so many players in the NFL obviously that most people wouldn't be able to name or recognize, and everyone knows Shador Sanders. They can recognize him. They know who he is, you know? So I think that really shows how powerful NIL is. We just have to make sure that it's being done the right way, you know?
Yeah, it's becoming more of a game not even just of talent, but of how well you can market yourself, I feel like.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
speaking of that, you had called Shador kind of more of an influencer as well as an athlete. And so do you think that athletes are now like more treated as influencers than players?
If you look at Livy Dune, she's a college gymnast, but also one of the biggest NIL earners because of her social media presence. And what's interesting is that her media attention doesn't come from traditional sports coverage, it comes from her own platforms. And brands are working directly with her and not through media companies. So she's basically acting as her own PR team and media outlet. But this can also create issues like fans showing up to meets just to see her, which actually led to security concerns and media restrictions.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting topic because, I mean, so many athletes nowadays, they're posting on social media, not just like pictures from games, but their daily lives, and even like on TikTok, like dances like Jared McCain in the NBA. And he got
Mhm.
popular at Duke for
Yeah.
posting dances in the locker room and stuff. So I think that's definitely something that's coming into play, and I think a lot of players who do that, I mean, it's smart. They really get their name out there, and they build that name just not just on their accolades in the sport, but also as like an influencer, which can definitely get them a lot more attention.
Yeah. No, yeah, that was well said. And like when it comes with that, do you think that teams are actually factoring in social media presence when they're recruiting these players?
Yeah, I think so because I mean, social media, it's out there for everyone to see. So if they do a good job, it generates great buzz and hype for the player and the team with that. But also it is risky because if they make one wrong post,
Uh-huh.
um, thousands of people, if not millions, are gonna see that and it could really hurt the reputation of not only the player, but also the team and the school.
And do you think that it makes it harder for teams to like control their image in a way because it's kind of like a factor out of their control?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, with like the structure of the media right now, it is very player based with all of these players having their own brand and being like influencers. And media has a lot more access to the players themselves now. So I think it's definitely harder for teams to kind of control their overall image. Especially with a lack of like restrictions with some teams, like it can definitely get out of hand where a player is kind of the whole image of the team or shifts the perspective of the public on that team. So I think that's definitely something that can go wrong for a team for sure.
And towards the beginning, you kind of talked about how schools like putting preparing athletes for media and all of that. So you do agree that or you do think that schools are doing enough to prepare athletes for that responsibility? Well, I know you said that you think they should. So I'm asking if you think they're doing enough right now.
I think it's debatable. I mean, it's there's always room for improvement, right? Especially with kids. I mean, they're just teenagers still for the most part, and
Mhm.
definitely policies and just supervision, not like um policing, but s- policies and supervision that helps them understand what they should and shouldn't be doing on socials is definitely important because it helps them understand so they can do it themselves. It's not like I think that the team should have access to their social media and post for them, but definitely kind of being there by their side to help them figure it out and then so they can do it themselves, you know?
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of even like in companies and stuff, like when they have HR,
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
exactly. Yeah.
Like, I feel like there should be at least someone that, like, for all teams or all players that they're comfortable enough to go to where they could be like, "Hey, should I do this? Shouldn't I do this?" If they have any questions. And maybe even just like how there's, how there's training and how there's sit down time to watch playback and watch videos. I feel like there should
Yeah.
be time as well. Like not really classes, but kind of like I guess like social media 101 and just like navigating this because a lot of these players too, they're coming from who everywhere in the world, and you know what I mean? You don't really know, what they don't know. Like, I feel like definitely doing something like that would probably help a lot of the fallout that's caused by
Yeah,
this.
for sure.
Within the team itself though, do you think that the NIL deals create tension between the players?
Yeah, I think they definitely can because there's such a gap between like a lower level player on a team and a star like Shador was that it could definitely create tension even between players because I mean some people are just like a student at the school who practice and sit on the sidelines for the team. Well, another one is schools like on the back burner and they're focused on getting to the draft and playing in the NFL or whatever professional league they're going to, right? So I think that definitely can create tension between players and also um, throughout the organization, not just players. Really, I think it could create kind of a like if there's a star or someone thinks they're a star, it can definitely create like kind of a diva mentality, I'll say, right? Where they think they're bigger than the program and they're gonna go off to do better things, which is could be true, but it definitely could create some tension and cause problems for a team for sure.
And no, yeah, I completely agree with you. You know, no matter where, there's always going to be that level of competition in sports, but I feel like it definitely adds a new level of competition that we haven't really seen in the past. Because now you're not just really competing on the field, but off the field as well. So I definitely agree with you.
Yeah.
My last thing I wanted to talk about before wrapping this all up is if you think that there should be more regulation around NIL and media exposure than there is now, or what you think should change.
So overall, NIL isn't just about money. It's completely changing the relationship between athletes, media, and organizations. And we're moving from a system where media controlled the narrative to one where athletes are controlling it themselves. And that means sports organizations, PR professionals, and media companies all have to adapt. Because at the end of the day, athletes aren't just part of the story anymore. They're the story.
Yeah, I think it's a good topic to wrap it up because we've talked about what NIL is and how it's powerful, but really coming back to kind of bring it back to earth. Because NIL is great, but it needs some regulations or it could get out of hand, of course. Um, so I think the regulations need to be solid. It's NIL's relatively new, right? But I think these regulations need to continue building up until there's like a set in stone rule book, really, right? Where every coach, every athletic department, and every player, especially, knows exactly what they're allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do, whether it's going to get sponsorships or social media aspects. I think setting that up where regulations are clear and we get to a point where everyone, especially players, truly does know what they should be doing and what's not allowed is that's when NIL will really hit its full form, I think, and when it will be very beneficial without so many risks to the players and the programs as well as like potential punishments because there's still a lot of compliance issues going around with NIL, especially with how new it is that can get teams or players into trouble. So cutting down on that and really getting an understanding of what you can do to truly utilize NIL to the best of its potential is where I think we need to go in the future.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So yeah, that I feel like we covered all of the things we wanted to talk about. And to wrap everything up, I genuinely think NIL has completely changed the structure of sports and media.
For sure.
It's created huge opportunities for athletes to build brands and make money, but it's also added, like you said, pressure, expectations, challenges for teams trying to manage their image. I definitely agree that there are more regulations I think should be in place. It is new. I do believe they will add them, but I think that it should be more of a thing where it's, precaution beforehand and taking steps to
Yeah.
kind of avoid disaster instead of like kind of reacting after something goes wrong.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Um so yeah, just I think that's where they should go in the direction of just like preparing in a way instead of just reacting
Hmm.
afterwards. And I honestly think the biggest takeaway is that media isn't just covering sports anymore; it's actively shaping them at this point.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, no, it was a great talk. Thank you so much, Kaden. And today's episode was a great one, guys. And thank you for listening to the Student Sideline. We will see you next time.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.